Nuuspot, die tuiste vir Afrikaanse stories agter die nuus.
Goeiedag en baie welkom by Nuuspot. Ons het gister die nuus gekry dat daar 'n aanslag op André de Ruyter se lewe was en dat hy 'n saak daaroor opgemaak het. Daar is nie veel inligting in die stadium beskikbaar nie, maar ons gesels met Chris Yelland, energiekenner, 'n bietjie verder daaroor om net so 'n bietjie lig te werp op die onderwerp. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning to you and your listeners.
Chris, in the light of what we saw regarding Eskom in the past year, in the past years, this is quite unsettling news. Can you give us a little bit more info about it?
Yeah, certainly it is unsettling, but it's certainly not the first threat against senior executives at Eskom. You know, a number of power station managers have to wear bulletproof vests. There was a reported bomb threat against Jan Oberholzer, and it extends beyond Eskom, of course. I mean, just today, I think it is the bodyguard of the Vice Chancellor of the University of Fort Hare was assassinated in a hail of bullets, and the Vice Chancellor is calling for the President to provide the necessary protection. So it is becoming something that has to be taken into account in South Africa. A little bit of background on this particular incident, as I have heard it from my source. Which I must stress is a source outside of Eskom, but it has been since confirmed by a high-level source within Eskom. And as you probably have heard, de Ruyter has in fact now, presented the details to the police, reported the matter to the police, and the police are now handling it. So it is definitely very substantial information. So the information that I have is that on the 13th of December 2022, last year December, after drinking a cup of coffee at his office in Sunninghill, Eskom's Megawatt Park office, he suddenly fell ill. Nausea, dizziness, disorientation, vomiting, and he subsequently collapsed and was unable to walk. He was taken to his doctor by the Eskom security detail, and there it was diagnosed as cyanide poisoning, and he was treated for this then. And at the same time, a number of blood tests were conducted, not just one, and all indicated very significantly higher levels of cyanide in his body. Subsequent to that, some internal investigations took place, and the matter was then reported on Thursday last week to the police in Hermanus, where de Ruyter, after his recovery, and I'm not sure that it's a full recovery yet, but he has been in Hermanus on leave. The matter was reported at the Hermanus police station and has subsequently been referred to the Midrand police station.
What do we make of this? How do we interpret this? Where do we go with this?
Well, as I mentioned, this is not the first incident, but it's a very serious incident, a threat against the life of a senior executive, and in this case, the CEO of Eskom, the outgoing CEO, because the day before this incident, he had resigned to the chairman of the Eskom board, that is Mpho Mokwana, but that resignation had not yet been made public. It was only made public the next day, after the poisoning incident, that is on the 14th. Look, we do know that De Ruyter and his executive team have been clamping down and cutting off illicit revenue streams from a number of procurement irregularities, fraud, theft, corruption, maladministration, both within Eskom itself and by certain of Eskom's suppliers and contractors. The other thing to you probably know, there is a kind of a construction mafia out there, demanding and threatening, violence if their demands are not met, to get part of the pie, you might say. It's kind of throws back to the kind of mafia state that existed in some parts of the United States many years ago when the mafia were in the construction industry. The point is there are also high levels of criminality and corruption, particularly prevalent in Mpumalanga province, where there's actually a high concentration of aging and poorly performing Eskom power stations. So it is the thinking is that these issues are related. This criminality, this clamping down of procurement irregularities and fraud, theft, corruption, maladministration plays a role in this as a kind of a seriously intimidating and threatening tactic by those who enjoy this illicit, illegal revenue streams and are trying to prevent this from being cut off.
And in what way will this be, or will this have a political source, where a place of origin within the politics?
Yeah, in the month of December, we had the ANC elective conference. In that same month, that month was marred by very high levels of rolling power cuts throughout South Africa, which is unusual at this time because electricity demand is traditionally at its lowest as the country enters into the summer holiday period and the festive season. So this unusually high level of rolling power cuts, load shedding, it has been attributed to, and I'm not saying the only cause, but it's certainly been accentuated by incidents of shall we say, threatening behavior, behavior that affects production. To the extent where it is clear that there is some kind of political and criminal activity, to impact on Eskom's, production, and in so doing, to put pressure on the existing management, as showing them as incompetent, and in a way, this is a kind of sabotage. And I believe that there are indeed political motives as well in trying to change the executive at Eskom, change its policy direction, change its vision, and really, extend its overdependence on coal. So, the fact that we came in the midst of this heightened political tension around the ANC elective conference, and you may also remember that during the conference itself, the army, it was announced that the army had been called in to protect Eskom's assets at a number of power stations, and it's really becoming clearer that certain disaffected political and criminal elements have been engaging in these deliberate acts of sabotage, theft, and vandalism that worsens the security of supply situation in South Africa to the extent where state security is compromised. And so we should see this deployment of the South African Defence Force to power stations in that light. And it really indicates the threats that South Africa is facing to security of supply, as well as to perceived threats to the security of the state.
Chris, I remember last year we had I had an interview with you, and we were not very eager to ascribe the problems at Eskom to sabotage. We were quite uh, reserved to do that. But things are changing, have changed quite considerably now. Do we accept that there is a rotten network throughout this whole company?
I think so, yes. I think the levels of corruption and maladministration and fraud, procurement irregularities go deep within Eskom, but they certainly go well beyond Eskom too. Uh, to some extent, this construction mafia, which is prevalent in Mpumalanga province, is a sign that there is this kind of syndicate of people that feed. There's like an ecosystem that feeds off Eskom, and it has been doing so, since even the years before state capture, and it increased radically during the years of state capture, and it still exists. And as the executive tried to clamp down on this, these people are fighting back to protect their revenue streams. And I think, as I say, it goes beyond Eskom. There is a kind of a criminal syndicate that is trying to control parts of the economy of South Africa. A little different to the old mafia in the United States, which certain industries became under the control of these criminal mafia syndicates. And I think to some extent, this is what we're seeing in South Africa. I hope that, in the years that follow, in the decades that follow, because it won't be easy to stamp this out, but as it was done in America, it gets clamped down on. And if it is treated with the right level of severity, it can eventually be controlled, maybe not entirely, but down to more manageable levels. It obviously it involves, as it did in the United States at the time, and in the areas where the mafia operates in Italy, for example, in Sicily, in those years past. It involves the police. It involves politicians. It even, it had involved certain judges. I'm not saying that is the case in South Africa, but certainly there is a political element. There is an element, within the Justice Department and the prosecution authorities and the South African police, which have been hollowed out. And we see this, if you just look at Eskom itself, through all the criminality at Eskom, through all of this, to date, only one person really of significance has been charged. And that is Mr. Machela Kauka, former Eskom CEO. He has finally been charged with fraud, corruption, money laundering. There are a few others, lower level people that have been charged, but to my knowledge, none have yet actually, had their cases heard in court and had judgments issued. So it's a sign of the weakness of our, investigative authorities, prosecuting authorities, the Justice Department, the very slow processes there. And I think there's also a political element that, is protecting, these criminal elements, slowing these things down. And it has to be dealt with, thoroughly and harshly, and it's going to be a long haul.
You see, that is my question. It will be easy to deal with a corrupt individual or even a corrupt group, but a system that attacks the CEO by trying to poison him, and having a network. How do you do that? Where do you start?
And as I said, you've seen this assassination, the bodyguards of the Vice Chancellor of the University of Fort Hare. You've seen many political assassinations in South Africa. This is way more than an individual, way more. There's almost a set of syndicates out there that are trying to control this country. And it has to be worked on, at every level over a long period of time in order to bring it under control. Not an easy task.
Chris Yelland, thank you very much for making time for us on such a short notice. Talk to you again.
Thank you. All the best.
Jy luister na Isak Du Plessis op Nuuspot.